Hi there, my name's Graham O'Reilly. I'm a Director of NSOA Learning and the CTA Auditing Lecturer for the NSOA DVD Support Program. It's my privilege to take you through a high-level overview of our support offering for 2017, just running through the objectives of the program, the various components of the program. There are 5 different elements to the program that students are able to choose from. Running through a couple of the benefits to our program as to why we believe this is more advantageous than other offerings that are perhaps out there. And then lastly, just to finish off with a bit of information about the strength of our lecture team, to introduce you to the various lecturers and give you some background in terms of their experience. So perhaps just starting off with the objectives of the DVD program. This program was launched in 2010, although NSOA has been providing academic support for almost 20 years now, focusing on distance learning students. And really the background behind the need for support is the rather unique challenges that distance learning students face. To try and identify a solution that's going to be able to improve pass rates obviously means getting in touch with what the causes of the relatively low pass rates that UNISA students currently experience are. So having identified the causes of the poor pass rates, to then try and present solutions that are cost-effective, practical, flexible enough for students to be able to pick and choose the components they think will best suit their study techniques or their study methods. So a couple of the challenges and some of the reasons why the pass rates tend to be so low. UNISA students, distance learning students, are pretty much on their own. So you're obviously given guidance from UNISA. You've got TUT letters that you'll work through with assignment questions. You do have access to your UNISA lecturers and you can ask them questions. There's the My UNISA forum that UNISA uses very effectively. But effectively it's you interacting with those mechanisms. You don't have the ability generally to meet with other students or to bounce ideas off other students or to bounce ideas off lecturers and get pretty quick and prompt responses to any questions or concerns that you've got. So one of the results of being on your own is that you don't have someone there to explain things to you, to guide you through in terms of understanding concepts, theory, principles, and nor to take you through how to effectively answer questions, how to maximize mark scoring, where to start with questions, how to analyze the required, how to tackle frameworks, approaches to different kinds of scenarios. So that's a typical problem with distance learning. There are also generally no quick mechanisms to help you resolve problems. You're running on a very intense program. You literally are running on a 26-week study program where you're doing, UNISA recommend 20 to 30 hours of studies a week. There are no breaks at all. This is not like residential universities where you get midterm breaks. So you're literally going flat out 25 hours a week for 30 weeks. And you don't have time to go along and actually have long-term solutions to any problems you encounter. You hit a problem in this week, in this particular TUT letter, you need an answer to that problem now. You don't want to be carrying that forward into the next TUT letter or the next TUT letter, and maybe even not even resolve it before the test or the exam. So it would be important that any support program does enable you to have quick solutions to problems that you do encounter. This is probably the biggest limitation or stumbling block with distance learning students is the time. You have, as I said, 25 to 30 hours that you're needing to put in every week, and being distance learning students, for the majority of you, are employed full-time. So when do you put in this 25 to 30 hours? And if that is such a limited resource, how do you make sure that those times that you do spend are spent productively, efficiently, in a manner that's actually going to enable you to get through what you need to every week to be on top of your game, not falling behind? So any solutions have got to be in a manner that makes you able to utilize time effectively. And then the final challenge, I guess, is, and again, all stemming from studying on your own, is the difficulty in staying motivated. It's not uncommon for UNISA students or distance learning students in general to fall behind the program. And the problem with this program is because there are no breaks, you fall behind, you stay behind. It becomes incredibly difficult to catch up. So you need mechanisms in place that are going to encourage you to get through what you need to every week. That by the end of each study week, you sign off on that week having done everything you needed to do in that week, and you then start the following week on a clean slate. So effectively, in designing the interventions to deal with these challenges, they are meant to be able to accommodate these challenges and enable you to overcome them. So just to run through a high-level overview of the different components of the support program that we're offering in 2017. And I think just right up front to make it quite clear that this is not just a set of DVDs. There is an element to the support program that obviously piggybacks or utilizes DVDs to offer an element of support, but there are many other interventions that are available to students to choose. So depending on your needs, maybe you're comfortable with the theory, maybe you are repeating, maybe you don't need an update on theory or the DVDs from that perspective. But then perhaps there are other interventions that might assist you, particularly if you're repeating, to be aware of. So the interventions basically fall into the following categories. We have the DVDs covering all 5 subjects, and in each of these I'll go into a little bit more detail shortly. Excuse me. Those DVDs do also include a study technique DVD that I will again expand on. The second component that we make available to students is what we call our student zone. This is our online discussion forum, and we bundle that student zone with a weekly guidance document that our lecturers send through to all our students, just giving them a heads up on the upcoming tutorial letter, what to look out for, where to spend time, the good questions to focus on, that kind of aspect. So those are bundled together in one package, the student zone. We then also offer students the ability to write weekly control tests or practice tests. Again, I'll give you the detail, but this is a really good way to encourage yourselves to stay up to date with your studies. Effectively, at the end of each tutorial letter, you would write a control test, an unseen control test on that week's work or those 2 weeks' worth of work. You would submit that to us, we would have that marked, and you would then get feedback. It allows you to work towards something at the end of each study week, so you know you're going to be tested at the end of the week, which can help with the motivation. And importantly, it gives you feedback. So well before the UNISA test, you're already getting feedback as to whether there are areas you need to focus on during your revision leading up to each of the UNISA tests. The next component we offer are tutorials. The DVDs are focused on theory and explaining principles, while some of the DVDs do incorporate questions and the application of theory in answering questions. That isn't really the primary focus of the DVDs. What we do to deal with the application of theory in answering questions is we run these weekly webinars. So these effectively correlate with each of the study weeks. For every tutorial letter, there will be a webinar on that tutorial letter where we will run through in the evening for a 2-hour program. We'll basically run through a selection of questions with you in a webinar environment, so you have the ability to ask questions, but essentially giving you guidance around how to apply the theory and answering common questions you can expect from that tutorial letter. And then the final component that we offer is also webinar-based, this time running at the end of the study year, so usually in August and September, a series of year-end revision preparation webinars. So effectively an opportunity to run back through the syllabus with you, to go back through some of the more important topics from the year, and really just to give you a bit of a kickstart into your final revision program leading up to the final exams. So let me just take you through each of these components in a little bit more detail. If I start with the DVD component, this effectively, as I mentioned earlier, is the theory component. So there are 30 DVDs that are bundled in a box, basically 5 box sets. They give technical guidance on all 5 subjects. So the 2 financial accounting are split into 2 different subject areas or modules. So you've got the auditing, tax, MANAC, and the 2 FINAC modules. They are proper high quality DVDs. These are not MP4s that we've downloaded onto a DVD that we send out to you. They will play in DVD players, they will play on your computers, they will play on your smart TVs. They're meant to be viewed as videos rather than files. The focus of these DVDs is on the UNISA CTA syllabus. So these are not generic DVDs focusing on ITC level generic content. We are guided by the UNISA tutorial letters, the UNISA textbooks. So the emphasis here is to go and support specifically UNISA CTA students. The DVDs piggyback off the textbooks. So obviously the financial accounting DVDs will explain the principles in IFRS that you need to be aware of. The auditing ones will focus on your understanding of the ISA. The tax DVDs will focus on your understanding of tax legislation. Management accounting is a slight exception to that, in that there obviously is no open book textbook. So with Manac, what we do here is we basically piggyback the DVDs off the prescribed textbooks. So our Manac lecturer will effectively work through the textbooks with you, chapter by chapter, giving you a visual explanation of the concepts that are appearing in your textbook. I mentioned earlier that the DVDs do also include a DVD. It's a 3 to 4 hour DVD dealing specifically with motivation, goal setting, mark scoring techniques, study techniques, and final exam preparation techniques. That comes together with the theory DVDs. Just from a pricing point of view, each of these components is available separately, so you can obviously choose between the components depending on what suits your needs most. And the DVDs in 2017 are going to be priced at 2,350 Rand. That price is all-inclusive, so that includes delivery, VAT, everything. Okay, so that's the theory component, the DVD element. If we look at the next component, the student zone, the idea behind this intervention is to give you direct access to our lecture team. So we have an online discussion forum that we host through our NSOA website. Obviously, when you join the student zone, you're given login details. There are different zones for CTA1 and CTA2, and then there are different discussion forums for the various different subjects and even the various different topics within those subjects. The idea here is you are working through a tutorial letter in a particular week and you get stuck with a concept or a question or something in the textbook or something on the DVD. You literally pop onto the student zone, raise a discussion post. Our lecturers are automatically emailed to advise them that you have raised your concern, and they then endeavor to turn that around as quickly as they can. We try and aim for as soon as possible in terms of turnaround time, but ideally no longer than 2 days. In most instances, you will find queries being responded to within the same day even. It does just depend on when the lecturer is available. The other bit that's bundled with the student zone is this weekly guidance document that we send out to our students. So the lecturers, having had sight of the tutorial letter, will then put together a document that we send through to you, basically giving you, it's usually a 3 to 4 page summary of that TUT letter. We highlight the important elements, any changes to be aware of, important open book opportunities if those exist within the open book texts, questions that we think are better, stronger questions to be attempting, and just general guidance around how to approach that upcoming tutorial letter. We typically send that out towards the end of the previous week, so you have it in time for each of the upcoming weeks. The cost of that intervention is 500 Rand. That again is inclusive of VAT, and there's obviously no delivery fee or anything for that. But essentially, yeah, for 500 bucks, you get direct access to the lecture team right the way through the year, up until the exams, even the supplementary exams, and you get this weekly guidance update on every tutorial letter every week. The third element that we offer are these practice tests. So here, I spoke about these being unseen tests. They are set by our lecture team. They are not based on questions that are in the tutorial letter, so they should be questions you've not seen before. We do try and pitch them at the level that UNISA expect from a test perspective, so they should give you a pretty good indication of whether you are okay in those topics. We set 20 of these during the 4 UNISA test cycles, so effectively in each UNISA test cycle there are the 5 subjects being covered. There will be 1 test per subject per UNISA test cycle, making up the 20 in total. Each of the tests are 40-mark tests, so you obviously have the 15 minutes reading time and then the 60 minutes to answer them. And typically you would write these at the end of every study week, at the end of every TUT letter. You do sometimes get a TUT letter that runs over 2 weeks. You would obviously write the practice test at the end of the 2 weeks. For a 1-week TUT letter, you will write the test at the end of that 1 week. Excuse me. I mentioned that the tests are set by our lecture team. You'll see when I introduce them to you a little bit later, they all have vast experience in dealing with distance learning students. They have been working with me through NSOA. The greenest, if you like, is Professor Owen Skay, who's only been working with us for about 6 years. But when I talk about Carl Erasmus or Di Seckham, myself, I mean, we've literally been doing this for upwards of 10 years as a minimum. So you've got a very experienced lecture team. They know how to set questions. They know how to pull questions that are going to be appropriate to what it is that you need to pick up out of that particular study week. We do then have these tests marked. So effectively they would be emailed to you. The question would be emailed to you. You would then write them usually on a Sunday evening. You would send them through to us on the Monday morning. So you'll basically just scan an email to us. We then print them out and give them to a team of markers. We have a team of about 8 markers that we've been using. And again, a lot of them are people that have been on our books for a number of years now. I give them quite clear direction in terms of how to mark, what they're looking for, what kind of feedback to provide to you. Once they've marked it, you will then get your script back with their comments, together with a lecturer comment about general observations around how that question had been tackled by the students that had written it. The feedback that you receive is normally within 2 weeks of having written the test, and we do accelerate that closer to the UNISA test. So you will always get your feedback prior to writing the actual UNISA test at the very latest. The price for the weekly practice tests is 2,020 Rand, inclusive of that. So effectively, you're looking at about 100 Rand a test. That includes the setting, the marking, the feedback. The fourth component that we offer are the weekly tutorial webinars. We introduced these for the first time in 2016, and they actually proved very effective. We effectively have an opportunity here to work through a question or a couple of questions with you every week. We go through those questions in the tutorial letter, so while you are busy with the course, so for example, if you're doing Auditing 102 in this particular week, I would then host a webinar with you in this week, dealing with a selection of questions, dealing with the topics covered by that particular TUT letter. So it's an opportunity for you to get feedback while you are working with the material, an opportunity to ask questions if you need to. We do host these webinars in the evening so they don't interfere with your work week. And we've typically been running these things from between 6 p.m. through to 8 p.m. They don't always go the full 2 hours. On average, they're probably looking at 1 hour, 40 minutes on average is the length. We do also record the webinars, so we give you access to a Dropbox account where you're able to go and download the webinars. So if you have missed a webinar for any reason, you can go along and review it, or if you want to obviously revisit it and go back through it again, pause it at any point, re-listen to a particular component, you've got access to them, you can then go along and revisit them. The fee for the webinars works out at 3,100 inclusive of that, so you're looking at about 150 Rand per webinar. The final component, year-end revision webinars, again introduced for the first time in 2016 and again quite successful. Here we're going to run 15 of these webinars. We'll do 3 per subject, again hosted in the evening from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And the focus here will be obviously on preparing you for the final exams. So it's an opportunity over the course of 6 hours to run through the syllabus, obviously at a fairly high level, but at the same time focusing on the more important aspects and giving you a kickstart into your actual revision. They are delivered during August and September, with your exams being written usually late September, early August. The webinars do finish 3 to 4 weeks before the exams, so there is still enough time for you to actually put together your own revision programs and base your revision preparation on what we have given you as guidance through these revision webinars. They're again hosted by the same DVD lecture team, so you're dealing with the same team right the way throughout all these interventions, and they are also recorded. So if you miss one for any reason, you're able to download through Dropbox, or if you want to revisit one closer to your actual revision time period that you've allocated, you do have access to them to be able to do that. The fee for the revision webinars, 2,450. So again, also just around 150-ish per webinar on average. So what then would be the benefits to you in joining up with NSOA, as opposed to going to any other course provider that's also offering support to UNISA CTA students? Just to run through them, we believe we are very focused on UNISA CTA content specifically. So this is no generic delivery of content. The questions we set, the webinars that we work through, the questions we work through there, they will all be UNISA questions. The TUT letters, we have the TUT letters, so we use those to deliver the theory content in the DVDs, and we use that to be able to really pinpoint what UNISA are expecting of you and give you the feedback, the learning process that you need to be able to answer UNISA questions. The program has a huge degree of flexibility. One of the big advantages we believe with DVDs as opposed to face-to-face lectures are that DVDs you watch what you want to watch when you want to watch it. We used to run full-time face-to-face lectures. We used to run them on Saturday mornings. They were 5-hour sessions. We ran them in Durban, Joburg, and Cape Town, traveling around for the whole year. They were a nightmare from our point of view as lecturers, but even more so from a student point of view. What happens if you miss a lecture? What happens if you don't need to listen to the whole lecture? You go and listen through a 5-hour delivery for maybe half an hour or an hour that you needed. So I just really, in hindsight, don't believe that is the most flexible solution to understanding theory content. DVDs, they're all index-driven. You're given a complete Excel spreadsheet with literally telling you which topic is at which point on which DVD. The idea behind the DVDs is really to use them to focus on the difficulties that you have. They're not meant to be watched from beginning to end through all 30 DVDs. You select what you want to watch. You watch it as often as you need to. You pause as you're going through it. You go along and do a little bit of more research. You come back, you rewatch. So just a lot more flexibility than face-to-face. The webinars, the fact that they're all recorded, also gives you flexibility in terms of when you want to watch them or whether there are certain elements only that you want to go and rewatch. Practice tests, you're given the tests obviously during the program. Whether you write them or not, you are given solutions to all those tests. You're given the feedback that all students receive on those tests. So even if you want to go and use those practice tests at a later point to prepare for your NSOA test or even the final exams, you have the flexibility to make those decisions. The student zone being online, literally you can log on from your smartphone or from your computer at a time that suits you. If you're studying late in the evening, you've usually got Internet Explorer up and running. You just pop on, load the discussion post there and then. So really everything that we've tried to build in here is to give you the ability to do things on your own terms in a program that you structure and that suits your particular study needs. You obviously have the ability to watch things as often as you like. You have the ability to ask as many questions as you need to. That student zone is literally a 24/7 resource. You go wild. Anything that you're unsure about, our lecture team are pretty pedantic in terms of giving detailed responses to questions. You do also obviously have a history of all questions that students have asked. So it might be that before you go and put your post on, maybe another student has already asked that question. In fact, you're all emailed every time a student asks a question or a lecturer responds. Normally you just program your inbox to go and redirect those mails into a different folder because they can accumulate. But you've then got the ability to go in and actually selectively see which particular posts you want to go and view and what responses you want to go and read up on. We also believe it's a cost-effective solution. Some of the full-time lecture programs that are out there are hellishly expensive. We've intentionally gone the route of trying to keep costs down. We tend to focus on big volumes, enabling us to then apply economies of scale and keep costs down. In 2016, for example, we had over 600 students using the DVDs. So that does enable us to keep the costs down. The ability to also chop or choose between the different interventions also is an intentional design intervention. So to give you the ability to go along and say, well, actually, I don't need the theory, but the weekly practice test might be quite good for me. Or the ability to go and ask questions to lecturers for $500, that sounds like a good deal, let me just take that. You have the ability, you don't have to take everything, you don't have to take anything, obviously. So yeah, the cost effectiveness then comes through in giving you this choice between these different interventions that we have available to you. So let me then just lastly introduce you to our lecture team. There are 4 of us dealing with the 4 main subjects. Carl Erasmus is our financial accounting guru. He's been with NSOA for 8 or 9 years now. He also lectures permanently with institutes like Varsity College, so he is a full-time lecturer. He also does IFRS consulting. He actually runs audits. He provides consulting services to auditors on IFRS-related matters. So very experienced in terms of IFRS and a really good way of getting an understanding of IFRS across. Di Seckham is usually our favorite lecturer for all our students. She's absolutely brilliant. She's not a chartered accountant, but she is basically a tax specialist. So she has a law degree, a BCom degree, and her master's in tax. She has been presenting tax seminars for years, also been lecturing tax at an honors level for us now for 9 or 10 years, also lectures at Varsity College. She's got a very good lecture style. The tax DVDs are a real asset. Students often choose to only work through the tax DVDs and not need to refer to the tutorial letters or any other guidance. They're that good. On the management accounting side, we're very lucky to have Professor Owen Skay running our management accounting components, so everything, the tests, the student zone, the DVDs. Owen actually is the volume editor for the costing prescribed book, the finance prescribed book. So, I mean, he's intimately knowledgeable in management accounting. He actually runs the Rhodes Business School at the moment, but he is a specialist management accountant. So you couldn't be in better hands in terms of getting an understanding of management accounting principles, concepts. And remember I mentioned earlier, his lectures will focus on the textbooks. So it would be important that you do have the prescribed textbooks. He will work through examples in those books with you, and he will refer you to the individual chapters and content in the book as he explains the concepts. And then myself finally running the auditing component. I have been lecturing auditing for almost 20 years now. I teach practical auditing to audit firms in Cape Town. I do consult in terms of IFRS adoption and application within audit firms as well. I like to think I've got a pretty good understanding of auditing, and I like to think that I can get the message across too. So in a nutshell, I really think you're in a very capable set of hands here in terms of this lecture team. They're a solid, stable lecture team, highly experienced, and yeah, you're in good hands. So should you need any further information about the programs, we do have brochures that you can download off our website. I have made reference already to the pricing here in this delivery, but the brochure will obviously contain the pricing structures too. You're also able to get these interventions on an individual subject basis too, if you would like. So you can get DVDs just for tax or just for auditing if you would like. Practice tests are similar, the webinars are similar. The only intervention that we don't bundle on an individual basis is the student zone. So that's such a cheap component of it. The 500 Rand for the student zone access will give you access to all 5 subjects in terms of discussion forums and the weekly updates. But the other 4 interventions can all be purchased on individual basis too. Obviously the pricing does favor purchasing all 5 modules, but if you really only need 1 or 2 of those subjects covered, that does become a more cost-effective solution than having to buy a whole set, which you don't end up using most of it. What you can also find on our website is some testimonials from past students that have used our program. There's some quite good things they've got to say about the program. And it's not that we get bad comments and just choose not to put them up. We generally get a lot of positive feedback from students that have used the program over time. There's obviously further information there in terms of the actual program itself, and our contact details are there if you need more information. And finally, our online registration process you will access through our website. So just on our website, if you follow the links to the academic support programs, and in there you will see the DVD component. That will be the ability to then go and do the online registration where you can then choose which components you would like. So I hope that gives you a fairly good understanding of the various offerings that we have. Thank you for listening in, and I look forward to working with you in 2017.